Today you will become a mobile Godot developer. We are going to be creating this prototype directly in our phones without a PC, in which the player can basically move around, jump and collect some coins. You will learn project setup inside of the Godot engine, environment creation, basically the background and the ground. Finally, also we are going to be taking a look at the player movement, and we will end up taking a look at collisions with the coins. Let's firstly install Godot and also set up the project. So basically let's go inside of our phone or in the Google Play Store, and here we can simply look for Godot. For this tutorial we are going to be using Godot 4, so let's install this version that is the latest. As soon as you open Godot, it will require you to allow access to manage all the files. Let's close this pop-up. On the top left we can click new, and there create directly our brand new project, giving there a name, a path, a renderer, and then we can just click there create and edit. And here it is, the project opened. The next step is to download the assets of the game. Basically the assets are the different images that our game will have. Go ahead in the description, click in each of these images and basically download all of them. Open up your Files Manager app in your phone. It could be called Files, Files Manager or something quite similar. What you're going to do is to select all the files that you have just downloaded, and you're going to move them to the location where your project is. If you didn't change the path, it is going to be under the Documents folder, so there you're going to enter, and then you will find the folder of your game, and there you can basically move everything. After restarting the Godot editor, you will see over there the different assets that you have just imported. Let's first start creating the background for our game. For this we're going to be creating a brand new 2D scene that I'm going to be naming main. Then after this I'm going to go to scene, then save scene, and I will basically save there my scene. Then I will basically drag and drop the background into the scene, and there I will see it. Using the bars over here, you're going to be able to move around the editor. So make sure that your background is completely centered, and then you can select it, and in the inspector on the right you can go to transform, and here you can increase the scale to something like 1.4. In order to create now the ground, we are going to need a different type of node. So let's select our main node, that is basically the wrapper for all of the scene. Click on the add icon, and here we are going to look for static bodies. So here the static body, as it is stated in the description, this is a 2D physics body that can be moved by external forces. That is exactly for what we want. This is just like some kinds of wall, so let's add it right away. You should remember this static body as well. Inside of it, we are going to be adding a collision shape, because we want this object to be able to interact, to basically have some shape. And then this shape that we create is actually going to be the one that is going to be able to interact with the player. Finally, let's end up by adding a sprite. Basically, the sprite is a type of node that allows you to render images. In fact, your background node is a sprite node as well. Let's go inside of our sprite of the ground, and inside of the texture, let's select quick load, and over here we're going to click in ground. We can zoom in a little bit using both fingers. It looks quite blurry, so let's go to a sprite, scroll down over here on the options, and here on texture, in filter, let's select nearest. Let's scale in our sprite of the ground to something like 2.5. Now in our collision shape node, let's select shape, and here we're going to be creating a new rectangle. Let's move our sprite behind the collision shape so that we can actually see it. Let's click in the shape, and we're going to modify its size. We're going to give it 1500 on the X and 72 in the Y axis. As you can see, it will basically cover all the ground. Finally, let's select the ground node and move it to the bottom. Now we can click here on the play button. We are going to select the current scene as the main one, as we only have one scene, and this will look a little bit weird. So let's basically go to project settings, and inside of the Windows settings, we have to scroll down a little bit, and under mode, we have to set it to canvas items. Now when we play again, everything will be seen perfectly. Now let's create our player. Let's select our main node, and here we are going to be adding a node that is called character body 2D. Inside of it, as we did with our ground, we are going to be adding a sprite and a collision shape. In our sprite, let's actually load in the texture of it. As you can see, it looks blurry, so let's change the texture setting as we did, and add a rectangle collision shape that matches its size. You don't even need to change its shape, or basically the size of the shape. Now let's actually make both our sprites and collision shape a little bit bigger, something like scale 4 in both is going to work. Also, let's select our player node and move it to the bottom. Now let's start creating the UI for our player buttons. In order to do this, I'm going to be adding a control node. Basically, control nodes are used in order to create any kinds of UIs. I'm going to go to its anchor preset, that is that button over there, and make it full rect so that its size is going to be equal to the window size. And there I will basically create 2 button nodes, and I'm going to try to align them as well as I can of a size that I like as well. So basically those are going to be my left and right buttons, and I will end up by adding other button on top of them in the center that is going to be my jump button. In order to actually duplicate these buttons, it is super simple, so I don't know how to create them from complete scratch. You can basically hold the touch over there, and then you can basically click here where it says duplicate. Also, don't forget to rename your nodes accordingly. Before getting to code, it is super important that you go to editor, then editor settings, and that on the text editor behavior, you enable scroll end past of file. Basically, this option will allow you to move a little bit better along the Godot editor while we are coding. In order to make our player move, we are going to click on our player, attach a new script to it using that button, and then here we are just going to create. By default, this has some built-in methods that and functions that basically will allow us to move. Okay, I'm not going to explain this code because it is a little bit complicated, but to do a quick overview, we have here a speed constant. Basically, this is the speed at which our player moves. We have the jump force over here. We have the gravity that is directly gets from the project settings that we are going to be modifying. Then on the physics process, basically this is a function that is used in order to apply physical behaviors. For example, there we are adding the gravity if we aren't on the floor. Then we are handling there the jump, and finally we're also handling the direction and velocity of our player horizontally. But here we have some stuff to modify, because as you can see, this uses actions. For example, UI accept over there, and this is an action that can only be triggered on if we are on PC, because UI accept is the enter key of the keyboard, and as we are in mobile, we have to adapt this code in order to work with the buttons that we have just created. I will begin basically coding the jump. I will create at the top a variable named jump. This will handle when we can jump and when we can't. Then in the signals of the up button, I will connect both down and up signals, and basically when the button is down, we want to change jump to true, and when the button is up, we want to disable the jump. Then in the code, instead for looking for the UI accept action, we're going to check if jump. Basically, if jump is equal to true and we are on the floor, we are going to jump. Now when trying this out, you can see that indeed your player can now jump. Then let's connect all the rest of the button signals down. We're going to be creating a new variable that I'm going to be calling direction, and I will basically delete the direction variable that the code had created. When the left button is down, we want to change direction to -1, whereas when the right button is down, we want to change it to 1. Then finally, on both functions of the buttons when they are up, we're going to be setting direction to 0. Now, why does it happen? Because basically 0 in direction means that we don't want to move, and check here that, for example, in this code, we're going to be assigning velocity equal to direction times speed. Speed is basically an integer that we define at the top. So if we are multiplying 0 by any number, basically the velocity is going to be 0, and that is correct. And on the other hand, if our direction is 1, as it is when we are pressing the right button, it means that we are going to be moving to the right because numbers are like increasing. Whereas if we are moving left, we are going to make our direction equal to -1, so that the value that it gives over here as direction is negative. Also, the speed that is going to be applied to it is going to be negative as well, moving this to the left. It is literally how any axis in maths that you have probably seen works. And now basically you have your player moving in all directions, and you can even jump. Now, in order to create the coins for our game, we're going to be using the area to the node, because we basically want to detect the collisions between our player and our coin. That's it. We want to have no physics as we have in our player, so the area, the only thing that it has is that it basically detects collisions. Now, of course, inside of it, again, we are going to be adding a sprite and a collision shape. We are going to load in the sprite. I'm going to scale it to something like 3, and I will also change the texture so that it doesn't look blurry. Finally, let's add a rectangle collision shape to it as well. Let's add a new script to it, and we're going to connect its body enter signal. Basically, the signal is the one that is called when this object collides with any other body. And the only thing that we are going to be doing there is that if the body with which this coin is colliding with is the player, we are going to be calling the queue-free method that basically destroys the object. Also, you have to make sure that when you are connecting the coin signal, okay, you are indeed connecting it to the coin and not to the player, okay? So make sure that here you select coin and then connect. Now basically, again, holding down on the node, you're going to be able to duplicate them and move them to any space inside of your screen, and basically do this with, let's say, 2 or 3 coins at least. Now you can play and indeed collect all the coins that you want. The movement feels a little bit bad, so in order to fix this, we can directly go into the player script and modify a couple of values. So first of all, here on the speed, we can actually leave it as it is, but the jump velocity is the one that we have to modify. And basically I will give it here something like -750. And I will also modify the gravity under project settings and in physics 2D. Something like 1200 is going to work well. And this is the final result of the player movement and the game itself. If you want more Godot videos, more Godot mobile videos, let me know in the comments down below. Like and subscribe for more. Bye bye.